Welcome, folks, to the Not Mike and Mike Show. My name is Brian Nelson. I am not Mike. And my co-host, as always, is Mike McLeod. He is Mike. And today we have a show for you about the MLB Playoffs and our Not Reality League. And we'll start with the Not Reality League and with some of our ads and drops of the week. I'll start with me. I had 6 teams last week because of the bye week. Seattle was on bye. And so with that even number of teams, I have to drop a team, and I'm dropping Baltimore. And I'm sticking pat for the first time in these 5-6 weeks that we've been doing this. Week 6 that we've been doing this. Mike, your move for the week?
I'm going to, because I have the Vikings on bye week this week, I'm going to pick up the Bills for free, playing his San Francisco 49ers. Should be a good game.
The Colin Kaepernick-led 49ers. What do you think about the move?
I actually really like it. I talked about it on my radio show last week, or this week, I should say. I think Kaepernick just brings a lot more to the table. Obviously, Gabbert was the more accurate quarterback, and when you're only throwing 3 yards, it's nice to be accurate.
Yeah.
But you still have Torrey Smith that can still theoretically take a top off a defense, and now you have a guy that can at least get it there.
And if you look at the numbers closely between Gabbert and Kaepernick, he wasn't that much more accurate. It's like 2 percentage points more accurate. And with Colin Kaepernick, you have the afterthoughts of his playoff performances and him in the past, and you hope that he can
really
get back to
that he is still that guy.
Yeah.
I dare anybody to do well with Jim Tomsula as their quarterback, as their coach, I should say. And Harbaugh, there was a whole rash of injuries when they went 8-8 in his last year. So I don't really blame him. The biggest thing I ever had against him was clock management. And so if he can work on that a little bit, and that shouldn't be a problem with Chip Kelly's up-tempo offense. He shouldn't be looking up at the clock. Oh, it's 0. Call timeout. Oh, it's too late. 5 yards. All right, cool.
All right, yes or no? Jim Tomsula looks like he should be on the logo for Pep Boys. I'll take that silence as a yes. All right, one more question. Do you think that the Colin Kaepernick restructured contract is anything to do with him starting now? Do you believe that he went to Chip Kelly and they kind of made an agreement, I'll start you if you knock off the final 4 years and take this player option?
I don't know. I think because he announced him as the starter before the contract actually got done, what I would have done as Colin Kaepernick is just say, I'll give it a week. If I get hurt in this next game and I tear my ACL or something, knock on wood, something happens to me, then I'm guaranteed $14 million next year. So, I'd at least give it that week, and then on Tuesday sign the restructured contract.
Yeah, my conspiracy theory is that Colin Kaepernick wanted an opportunity to play, and they said, we're not playing you unless you restructure that deal. And
so they were
get rid of that injury clause.
They were going to put him in bubble wrap and say, unless you're going to, the only way you play is if you don't worry about getting hurt.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's 49er talk. Enough 49er talk for everybody's enjoyment.
Well, we got a little bit more because we still got to get to our most confident and least confident matchups.
So
I'll just go ahead and start. Most confident matchup, Bills over 49ers. The Bills have won 3 straight. They're sneaky good. I like to joke about Rex Ryan and his foot fetish, but he knows how to coach a defense, and I think that this is a terrible landing spot for Colin Kaepernick. I think I had said a couple weeks ago, next week against Tampa Bay at home would have been the better choice, but you throw him out on the road, he's going to get booed anyway. He's probably not going to win that game. But Gabbert's not going to win that game either. So, they're an 8-point favorite. So, I actually heard this on the radio. If Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, the point spread in Vegas swings 7 points the other way. So they can go from a 7-point favorite to dead even if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. What do you think the point spread difference between Blaine Gabbert and Colin Kaepernick was?
I'm going to guess maybe like a 1-point improvement?
Yeah, a half-point improvement.
Okay.
They're 8.5-point dogs with Gabbert at the helm, 8-point underdogs with Kaepernick. So that just shows how bad Blaine Gabbert was.
Yeah. And the Bills really turned it around after they fired former 49er offensive coordinator Greg Roman. So there you go, full circle of the 49er mediocrity.
Last.
Okay, let's open up that circle. One more point.
Just a little. It's more of an oval at this point. Is this Trent Baalke's last year?
God, I hope so. Man, I hope so, because I feel like he owes his job to Todd McShay, because every time Trent Baalke had a draft, oh, that's a solid pick. He's a first-round talent that has some injury questions, but if he pans out, man, that's a heck of a pick. And then you look back 3-4 years later at some of his picks, awful.
Yeah.
Those picks never panned out.
A.J. Jenkins,
Tank Carradine, Marcus Lattimore, all top third round and up picks, never panned out. Never panned out.
And Chip Kelly's guy, I'm blanking on his name, Campbell, something like that.
Campbell?
I don't know.
The first round pick this year?
No, the assistant GM that he brought in.
Tom Gamble?
Tom Gamble. Yeah. So he's going to take the GM's place.
Job.
Yeah. So yeah. And you could kind of already see that with the draft that they had this year, which we're on record as saying there's no way he passes on an Oregon guy, even though it made more sense to take Jack Conklin. And who was right? Not Todd McShay. It was us.
Yes. And hopefully I will be right with my most confident pick, New England over Cincinnati. New England, since I picked them up and after that Arizona win, have been pretty consistent. And obviously with Tom Brady, they absolutely demolished the Browns last week. The Bengals, they're okay. And with New England at home, they're so dominant that those pretty
Cincinnati's
okay teams.
a playoff team, but they're still the same playoff team that they were, where they'll get to like the wild card game and just relieve themselves.
Yeah. And they still don't have Tyler Eifert back, who's really been slow getting back from that offseason injury. He got hurt in the Pro Bowl and still hasn't gotten back.
Ban the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, Cincinnati fans definitely want to ban that. I'll go through some of my picks. Denver lost on Thursday Night Football. I had to have them. So I'm already starting out 0-1 after going 2-3 last week.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Can we put up the records? Did we do that already? Can we bring it up again?
Let's redo it just to really reinforce the overall records. My overall record, 14-11. I went 3-2 each of the first 4 weeks, and I was dying to not go 3-2, and so I went 2-3.
Yeah.
And I'm blaming that seat over there because for some reason we decided to switch seats last week. Didn't work out for me. Worked out great for you.
I think this seat actually has a 1-point advantage. Can you just bring up mine? 4-1 last week. Oh, it's over here. 4-1 last week. 17-8. I think that because we both had been going 3-2. That you get an extra win just by being in that seat, and I get a 1-loss advantage. So we both should go 3-2 this week.
And so I'm already 0-1, so I got to go 3-1 with the rest of my picks. Philly over Washington, Seattle against a tough Atlanta team, and Arizona and the New York Jets, the Jets, planes, as I like to say, just to screw that up. And
I hate you so much.
I'm honestly not confident about any of these matchups. Probably this.
I think I'm more confident in your matchups than you are.
Yeah.
Because I think Philly can just destroy Washington.
But they lost to the Lions last week.
The Lions are a tough team.
They are surprisingly a lot better than I thought they would be.
They're like 11 points from being 5-0 and 5 points from being 0-5.
Wow, good stat.
And the same with the Raiders. They have a point differential of like 5 points.
And the Raiders are 4-1. They're on your list. Let's go through the rest of your 4 matchups of this week.
Steelers over Dolphins should be a bloodbath. Nobody can keep Tannehill upright. I think it was something like 10 or 11 sacks in the last 2 weeks. Shouldn't see any change there. Packers over the Cowboys. I really like what Dak Prescott has done with that offense. I asked you at the beginning of the year, is Tony Romo ever going to play again? It's more and more of a question as he nears his return date. I like that Dak Prescott said this is still Tony's team. I'm just filling in. I think that was the only move that could be made. Also love Ezekiel Elliott, 130 yards each of the last 2 weeks. But I just think that the Packers, they're sneaky good on defense. They've only allowed, it was either 71 or 171, probably 171 rushing yards through 5 weeks, or 4 games, I should say, which is the second least since the history of the Super Bowl.
Wow.
So hopefully that neutralizes Ezekiel Elliott. I have him in my fantasy team, so. But yeah, Packers over Cowboys, Panthers over Saints. This is my last week for Carolina. If they lose to the Saints, I'm dropping them next week, and you can have them if you want them. But that's actually not my least confident matchup. Oakland versus the Chiefs. Oakland's a 2.5-point underdog at home, even though they're 4-1, just because they've been squeaking out these close games. If you can shut down the run, I think the Raiders have a good chance at winning, but they've been a sieve so far in run defense. They've given up a bottom 5 rushing defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's close because every game has been close. Probably like
It'll come down to
24-17.
a fourth quarter comeback drive from somebody, either Alex Smith
and
or Derek Carter.
I put more faith in Derek Carter to lead a team down the field than Alex Smith.
Oh, man. And just pile on another 49er just to end this segment.
But Michael Crabtree will do extremely well.
There you go. And so those are our picks for our Not Reality League for Week 6. When we come back, we will give our takes on what happened during the NLDS and ALDS, so don't go anywhere.
If you have an interest in a career in sports broadcasting,
whether it's behind the scenes or on camera,
then this is the class for you.
Class is held every Wednesday from 1:30 to 4:30 in room 121 alongside the library building.
For more information, contact Greg Poff. That's me at solano.edu.
we hope to see you here next semester. And remember,
it's more than just sports. It's an education.
And hello, everybody. We are smiling to not cry because last week we picked our teams to win the World Series, and 1 week later, they are out. So we are going to recap the NLDS and ALDS. Let's start with your Giants, Mike. How are you holding up after that 4-game series?
You know, it was the same thing. It turns out the only thing that can beat the Giants is themselves in October. And the same thing that had played them all year, 32 blown saves at the end of it. You're up 5-2 in the 8th, and the Cubs just look defeated. They're already looking on to Game 5. Mm-hmm. And you have Matt Moore, who had just thrown a 1-2-3 8th inning, and you go, you know what, I'm going to throw it over my bullpen. But I'm not going to throw it over to the closer that's been so terrible for us, but also knows how to pitch in that situation. And I'm not going to throw Bumgarner out for 1 inning, which we'll get to later why that was a great idea. You throw it over to a rookie, Derek Law, who had a great ERA through the regular season, but had never been in that situation before.
Got a lot of TV time for celebrating.
Yeah, that's great because he didn't have to do anything. Yeah. He got to celebrate. And you throw out 5 pitchers in that 9th inning, and it makes me a little sick to my stomach because it always has felt like they're better than that. To lose the Cubs are only the 2nd team in World Series or like postseason history to come back from a 3-run deficit in the 9th inning of a clinching game. Mm-hmm. But you can't just blame the bullpen because Samardzija was terrible in Game 2 and the offense was terrible in Game 1. The only time everything came together was Game 3, and that included a lot of even-year magic.
Connor Gillespie,
who probably still won't be on the team next year. Same with these postseason October heroes never get on the team next year. Pablo Sandoval, Travis Ishikawa,
yeah.
Like they're never on the team opening day. But yeah, it sucks. But you know, the Cubs did win 100 games. The better team really did win that series. It would have been kind of fluky if the Giants had won, even given their first half success. They just were too bad in the second half to really do anything. And my conspiracy theory of the day is that because Matt Moore had 120 pitches through 8 innings, you could have thrown him back out there. And I think if he had been a rental, they would have done it. Mm-hmm. Because if you throw your arm, you're not on the team next year.
Brian Wilson.
But Matt Moore is controllable for, I think, at least two more years.
Yeah.
So you go, well, listen, we have a 3-run lead. If it was a 1-run lead, maybe you throw him back out there because you need him. But 3-run lead, your bullpen should be able to put that one away. So you say, okay, he's done enough. I don't want him throwing out his arm. I need him next year too if he has to have Tommy John in the offseason. Just fluky stuff. But if he has to have Tommy John in the offseason, then I can't play him next year. And we traded Matt Duffy for basically nothing.
Yeah.
So.
And unfortunately, I thought back during the trade deadline, the Giants not picking up a back-end bullpen arm. I thought Andrew Miller, which Cleveland got, which we'll get to in a second, of why Andrew Miller is so valuable, and Aroldis Chapman were both on the trade market. You trade all of these high prospects. You trade a Matt Duffy. You trade, I believe his name is Lucius Fox.
Yeah.
He's an 18-year-old infielder, also in that Matt Moore trade. You trade Phil Bickford for Will Smith.
And Will Smith got in there and didn't do anything the entire time he was there.
Like a 7th inning, 8th inning guy, you trade all these top prospects to get these pieces, but you don't package them together to get the one piece you need to solidify that back end.
But, Chapman is still available this offseason.
He is.
As well as Andrew Miller, I think. So, all things considered, Chapman probably goes back to the Yankees. That's where I would go because that's where I wanted to go. That's why I signed with them. Mm-hmm. And then they traded me to get pieces. Now they still have those pieces, and I can come back to them. So I've never really liked one-year rentals.
No. The Carlos Beltran experience really psychologically affected Mike. That Zach Wheeler, who hasn't done anything anyway. But still.
Zach Wheeler was like the second guy in the Mets organization behind Bartolo Colon until like all their young guys came up. Like Zach Wheeler was the second guy on, admittedly, a bad Mets team at the time, but he was still like the number 2 starter. So.
And by the way, we're kind of sidetracking, but how about the Mets? Noah Syndergaard, you realize they got him in that R.A. Dickey trade?
Yeah.
How good did they clean up in that trade? Now let's go over to the other matchup. The Cubs obviously beat the Giants, so they will be facing the Dodgers, who just squeaked out that Game 5 win.
So it turns out that you can throw your ace starting pitcher in the 9th inning of a game that you have to have, and he can close the door on it.
A dominant lefty starting pitcher to end a series.
What do you know?
But man, Kenley Jansen coming in the 7th.
Yeah.
2 1/3 innings, over 50 pitches. And like we were texting back and forth between the game. I was telling you I have a bad feeling about this. That's really early, trying to get a 9-out save as a closer when you don't see 6-out saves.
Yeah.
Let alone 9-out saves. So obviously Dave Roberts had in the back of his mind.
Kenley Jansen's been unhittable basically.
Yeah, and he really has been. And Kershaw, before the game, Dave Roberts was saying he's absolutely not pitching in this game.
He's on 1-day rest. You don't do that.
And what do you know? He pitches into the game.
Well, it turns out Kershaw said, "Put me in the game."
Yeah.
Like I need to close this out for you. I think that one shows a lot of confidence, and 2, I think it kind of slayed some demons that he had in the postseason. Second career save. Do you want to talk about the fun fact of the day?
Yeah, we'll credit Zach Poff with this little nugget of information. His only other career save in his professional career, majors and minors, that was his first one in the majors, was in the minor leagues, and his catcher was Kenley Jansen.
There you go.
So it all came full circle for the Dodgers. 2 wins in the series for Kershaw and a save. Very Bumgarner-y performance.
Don't mention that in the same breath.
And really, the Nationals, can we talk about how disappointing they are as a franchise?
They've been the Walgreens bad for as long as I can remember, and I've never liked the Nationals. I've always been super hard on Bryce Harper because even though baseball is by far the most team-oriented sport, he needs to do more for his team. And obviously, he got walked intentionally, and then I'm blanking on the name of the guy that hits behind him.
Worth.
Yeah. So then walked him too.
The rated R superstar, Jason Worth.
Really?
Yeah, he looks like Edge from WWE. No? Nobody? Just me? Okay.
I guess that's just you.
Sorry, me and Roflo former ESPN commentator Robert Flores.
Okay, that's fair.
I picked it up off of him, you know? All right, let's go to the ALDS.
Would that make him the ultimate opportunist as well?
Stop it. We'll go over to the ALDS. The Blue Jays defeated the Rangers in a sweep, and they really, you expected a lot more kind of fireworks out of that series, but all exciting games, and the Blue Jays just looked pretty dominant, carried that momentum over from the wild card into that series.
How'd your dominant offense Rangers look in that series?
Yeah, they look pretty pedestrian. And the Blue Jays pitching staff is very underrated in terms of a staff. Marcus Stroman, good young arm. Aaron Sanchez, they've been protecting his arm. They went to a 6-man rotation for the majority of the second half after picking up Francisco Liriano at the trade deadline.
Great, underrated pickup.
And then at the end in September, they transitioned him over to the bullpen, and he looked great in that series out of the pen. And in extra innings, he was really a factor. And so Francisco Liriano really did a great job out of the bullpen, and their offense just looked very dominant. Edwin Encarnacion, who's on a free agent year, Jose Bautista's on a free agent year. So this might be the last opportunity for the Blue Jays to really strike while Josh Donaldson's there, Troy Tulowitzki, and they really look like they have a lot of momentum going into the ALCS, and they'll be playing the Cleveland Indians. Unfortunately,
it's okay.
It's a sad day in the kingdom as the Red Sox,
they waved goodbye to Big Papi.
And they were so close in so many games. That first game, we started filming. I looked at the score. It was 1-0. When we started filming, it was 4-1. They were losing by the end of it.
Yeah.
And Xander Bogaerts had an opportunity to put them ahead with a hit, tie the game in the 8th inning, but Cody Allen, the closer, managed to get Bogaerts out, and they sealed that game. And really, I want to credit Terry Francona, who, obviously, being a Red Sox fan, know very well. He did a great job managing the bullpen for them. Like, when you think getting Andrew Miller at the trade deadline, you think you get your back-end closer. But Francona used Miller in a different way. He is the emergency stopgap. If you feel like your starting pitcher is starting to lose the momentum of the game, you just throw Andrew Miller in there, and he just stifles the offense.
Yeah.
And then you replace him with your other bullpen arms who kind of get and bridge the gap to Cody Allen.
Because he's a closer, he can come in a high leverage, people on first and second with one out. He can come in the middle of the inning with runners inherited and completely shut down an inning. Whereas younger guys need to feel that they're starting fresh. They need to start out of the windup and get a full inning under them in order to really excel. He's obviously a guy that can do both.
Yeah, and Miller, if you look at his career, started out as a starting pitcher, so endurance isn't really an issue.
Yeah.
He's pitched more than one inning. Yeah, and he was a starting pitcher in the Detroit Tigers organization and got traded over to the Marlins in that Miguel Cabrera trade. So obviously he's been a top prospect ever since he was in there. You get traded from Miguel Cabrera along with Cameron Maybin, and then he didn't really pan out with the Marlins.
Hold on. I hate Cameron Maybin.
Oh yeah, but in a vacuum, when you're like 20 years old, you're that athletic.
No,
and
I
then
get it.
He didn't do anything.
I just think he's been a bum ever since I went to the game that it was a 14-inning game that I went to against the Padres.
Yeah.
And I was in the outfield bleachers, and I just heard the entire center field section says, "What's the matter with Maybin? He's a bum."
Yeah.
And I've always just thought he was the worst center fielder in the league ever since then.
He's been terrible. And Andrew Miller didn't really pan out with the Marlins either. It wasn't until he shifted over to the bullpen with Boston, and the Boston ties with Francona and Miller is where he really honed in his specialty of being that lefty out of the pen.
Yeah.
And then he became the closer with the Yankees, and now he's just doing great things with the Indians. So when we come back, now that we have the ALCS and NLCS matchup set, we'll preview what we think about these two matchups. And now that we've gotten our objectivity back and our teams are out of the playoffs, we'll get a more objective look at the World Series when we come back.
Hi, I'm Anthony Williams, the SCSN video editor, broadcaster, and cameraman. Thanks for watching the Solano College Sports Network.
And welcome back, folks, to the Not Mike and Mike show. We're going to talk about the ALCS and the NLCS matchups. Mike, which area do you want to start in? NLCS?
Let's go to the NL. Sure.
All right, so we got the Cubs and the Dodgers. John Lester has already been penciled in as a Game 1 starter. Dodgers are going to have an interesting choice as to who they start Game 1 to try and get Game 1 in Chicago.
Clayton Kershaw.
Why not? just wear his arm out until you get that title. How do you anticipate the series going?
So you said at the end of the last segment that we've regained our objectivity. I haven't completely yet. I think this is the Cubs series to lose. They have a lot of momentum. Anytime you can beat, I know they're not the reigning world champs, but you beat that even year magic thing, that you feel like you've just won your own World Series. So you bring that into the next round. You don't have to see Clayton Kershaw in a starting situation until probably Game 3, I would assume. And so you have Kenta Maeda, who balled out. He showed up.
Yeah.
But then I don't even know who you got after that.
I mean, you have Rich Hill, who does have the blister issues.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. We have Poff over to the side. Do you know who?
You're right.
Oh, yeah. Who?
Okay.
Someone they go to.
I mean, but he's still like a 20-year-old, so...
Hey, Bumgarner, 20 years old in the World Series.
You know, that's true.
So age doesn't mean anything for composure. It's a real test. It's a gamble for sure because you don't know what
I
it is.
think you're putting him up against John Lester and then possibly Jake Arrieta.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not about how well they do. It's about how well the offense can do as well.
But it does match up pretty well, the fact that Kershaw pitched Game 4 and in the bullpen, that he will likely pitch 3 and 7 should it go a full 7, and you probably wouldn't want any other pitcher besides Clayton Kershaw as a Game 7 starter should it go that far.
I don't think it will go that far.
You think a 6, 5?
I think Cubs in 5. Cubs in 5, maybe Cubs in 6.
Okay. And I think really more than the even year magic kind of thing, that the Cubs' momentum is the fact that their bats were really silenced by the Giants early on for the majority of the series.
Yeah.
Obviously, Game 1, their offensive woes weren't highlighted because they got the big home run from Javier Baez. But Game 2, they struggled. Game 3, they struggled. Yet somehow their bats kind of woke up late in that Game 4. And you can carry that sort of confidence into the next round against the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, they have their own postseason success, and we were talking about Justin Turner.
Yeah.
Right, Justin Turner. He's a real solid player at third base. Gets a lot of gets on base a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Corey Seager. That's the Seager brother, right, on the Dodgers?
Probably. Don't look at me.
Yeah, Corey Seager. Okay. So Corey Seager.
That just shows how many Dodger games we watch.
Justin Turner getting on base, trying to set the table for Adrian Gonzalez and company. I just think that the Cubs are just a little bit more well-rounded overall as a team from the offensive perspective. Chris Bryant, he has not shown any sort of nerves in his real first postseason run. Anthony Rizzo, on the other hand, he needs to be corrected if the Cubs want to go far. But I think the pitching matchup lines up well with Lester, and we saw Arrieta. Lackey looks good.
Yeah.
And they also have the NL ERA leader, by the way, as a fourth starter in Hendricks. So I just think the Cubs are a little too deep right now for the Dodgers. I'll say Cubs in 6. So
all right, cool. I'll go Cubs in 5. You go Cubs in 6.
Okay. All right. We'll go now to the ALCS. Blue Jays and Indians. Tough to kind of match up. You're anticipating sweep?
I'm thinking a Blue Jays sweep. I think they just got way too much momentum. I think that you come out and you beat the Rangers the way you did. The Rangers had almost a 14 ERA in just as a starting staff, and you got 10 runs in the first game. You came out and just obliterated this team that you were supposed to lose against. And you have a Cleveland staff that has Andrew Miller, and you have all those starting pitchers, but you can't throw Andrew Miller out in like the second inning. You know what I mean? Like if he's going to be your emergency stopgap, that requires them to go into the 6th inning at least. So you can't. You have to use then a long reliever. I think just if you can get on the starting staff early, then Toronto's going to have a lot of momentum. They already do. and they just have so much offense.
Plus, you look at all the offense are right-handed as
Yeah.
well against Andrew Miller. So Edwin Encarnacion, Josh Donaldson, Jose Bautista, Troy Tulowitzki, all right-handed hitters, Russell Martin. So it's not a lot of lefties. The only lefty I can think of off the top of my head is Michael Saunders.
Yeah.
And Michael Saunders isn't going to be the X factor for the Blue Jays losing the ALCS. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike.
It's no offense taken.
No, I was Mike Saunders.
It's not.
Not this Mike. Not Mike. To Mike Saunders.
Okay.
And so I like the Blue Jays in 5. I'll give the Indians credit that they can sneak one out at home. And they do have solid starting pitchers. I think Corey Kluber can shut down a Blue Jays offense for a game, but I don't think they have the pitching staff down the line that can really...
They'd have to pitch him like 1-4-7.
1-4-7 for them to have a real good shot. And then they still have to have one of their other starters beat
Game 5, yeah. So
to advance. So we both have Cubs, Blue Jays in the World Series. How do you see that one breaking down?
I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. The Cubs bullpen, I think, is super underrated. Even though they hadn't given up a hit, or not a hit, but they hadn't given up a run until the 8th inning of Game 3, and then obviously they had their woes through Game 3 and most of Game 4, and then they still have Chapman at the end of the rotation. They still have him in 9th innings, and you can't really argue with 103 miles an hour. And I mean, maybe Bautista runs into one and he sends it into the stratosphere. But I think that the Blue Jays have to get a little bit luckier against a legitimate starting staff in the Cubs. We've already documented that. And then the bullpen, I think, is going to be a key to the Cubs beating the Blue Jays. I'd like it to go 7 as a fan of baseball, but it's probably going to be 5 or 6 for the Cubs.
Yeah, I'll say Cubs in 6 again, just to be consistent with Cubs
Sure.
in 6. I like them as well. I always favor the NL team in World Series. It's just the fact that the AL is so used to that DH that those 3 games that you have to play for the NL. I believe the AL won the wild card this year, right? Not off the top of my head, but I believe that the AL won, and whether it's 3 or 4 games without your DH, that's half the series. Now you play a whole different style of baseball.
Yeah.
And for the NL, all you have to do is
an
you now
advantage.
have a hitter hit for your pitcher. That's an advantage playing in the AL rather than the AL having a disadvantage having your DH. Edwin Encarnacion's been a DH most of his career with the Blue Jays. He can play first base. He does play first base, but ideally you would like to have him as your DH. It's not as dramatic as, let's say, David Ortiz having to play first, having Hanley Ramirez out of the lineup, for example. Not still bitter. It's okay. It's all right. We'll get through this. And the Cubs will get through this, and they will finally end their streak. I think Joe Madden really deserves a lot of credit for getting his guys in the right mind frame. This 100-plus year curse streak that they're trying to break, that's daunting. It's daunting.
Yeah.
And to have your leader kind of give you the perspective of, hey, we know we're the best team. We got to approach the season as we are the best team.
You have
grow
to have
up,
confidence,
you
yeah.
get the best record, and now you have a lot of confidence from your manager going forward, and that this can be the year that they break the streak. So we both have Cubs over Blue Jays. And so now we like to do a little way too early predictions on this show.
It's not even that early anymore. A couple more weeks and the offseason is right there.
So we've been touching on throughout the show about potential free agents coming up. And so Mike has a list of top 10 from a, what's the source?
MLB trade rumors. It's just the guy, this is from September 1st, so things have changed a little bit. But I'm just going to kind of lightning round through them. And like we did with the NBA way back when, you're just going to tell me where they go.
Right on.
Number 10, Josh Reddick.
I like Josh Reddick as him going to a solid team that needs an upgrade defensively and can hope that he gets back to the offensive Josh Reddick that he was with the A's. I like him maybe going to the Indians, for example, as he can go play left, right field, center, as they've had Rajay Davis, and that's...
Coco Crisp.
Yeah, those kind of players. He fits in well with the Indians organization, I think, and so I would say Cleveland.
Okay. Number 9, Jose Bautista.
I think that the Toronto Blue Jays would show loyalty to Bautista and pay him the money he's looking for. He was looking for $30+ million prior to the season. I don't think he's going to get that. He had a lot of injuries this season, but I still think
35.
The Blue Jays will find a way to meet some sort of middle ground and get back Bautista.
You think like a 3-year deal or like a 2-year deal?
Maybe 2-year and an option.
Okay. Number 8, Mark Trumbo.
Trumbo, I think, is going to be one of the most pursued and overpaid free agents. If I was a team hoping to sign Trumbo, I'd be kind of cautious that I'm paying too much for a guy who's been really up and down. But I think his home needs to be in the AL for sure. His time in the NL shows that he's just not suitable for that league. He's really in the AL East. So I say the Yankees should try and sign him. They have a lot of cap room coming off the books. Mark Teixeira is retiring at first base. He can play first base. He can play corner outfielders, but he can be that DH that really surrounds that young, talented core that the Yankees brought up.
He's like Giambi light.
Yeah, and right-handed.
There you go. Number 7, Justin Turner.
Justin Turner, I think, is going to be the #1 priority for the Dodgers this upcoming offseason. I think Andrew Friedman, the GM, is very analytical. He comes from that Rays organization, and he really values the sabermetrics of baseball. And we were talking about how Justin Turner has the biggest WAR, wins above replacement, out of all the free agent class. And really, Turner has done so much more than the Dodgers expected, picking him up off the Mets as a utility infielder. And now he bats third. He mans third base. He makes a real good left side of that infield with Corey Seager. I think he's a top priority, and he'll go back to the Dodgers.
We transition from one WAR leader to another, Ian Desmond.
Ian Desmond, I think he's really, his story is very hard to predict. I still don't know what he is. He signed with the Rangers, transitioning to the outfield, but I thought he was going to be a corner outfielder. But because of injuries to Hamilton never came back, Shin-Soo Choo never really panned out. He got hurt, and so he got forced into that center field duty. He was pretty solid in the regular season, but
you said duty.
in the playoffs, he showed that he's not, I think, a true center fielder.
Yeah.
So I think his role going forward will be for a good team, but he needs to be a utility kind of guy, a Ben Zobrist that moves around the diamond, and which is why I think a good spot would be with the Cubs. He can back up Addison Russell at short, should Russell have any sort of injury. He can play that left field, which is a rotation with the Cubs. You throw anybody in there. If you play catcher, you can play left field. If you play center field, you can play left field. If you play shortstop, you can play left field for the Chicago Cubs. And then you can have him at center field should you lose Dexter Fowler in free agency, and he is a free agent coming up. So I think that is a good contingency plan for the Cubs should they lose Fowler.
Okay. Wilson Ramos.
Wilson Ramos is interesting. Like, he has had his career year with the Nationals. I can't really think of a team off the top of my head, though, that really needs that catcher to really improve their team. Maybe the Indians again, but I obviously predicted Josh Reddick. I don't think they're going to be big free agent spenders. No. So I would say that the Nationals would shell out some money to keep their starting catcher, keep that core with the pitchers.
Edwin Encarnacion.
I would love for him to go on the Red Sox to try and replace David Ortiz. Obviously, before the season...
You don't think Pablo Sandoval can replace him?
That's the point I was about to make. Pablo Sandoval was kind of slated into that role when he signed that 5-year deal, like, hey, you'll play a couple years in the field. Then when David Ortiz retires, you could get that DH spot. But would you rather have a 210 hitter with weight issues that may or may not be any good, or would you rather get a guy that's 35 home runs, 100-plus RBIs in free agency, sign him to a 2-3-year deal?
Yeah, sure.
And then he could be your DH. Or you could shift over Hanley to DH and have Encarnacion at first.
There you go. You got some choices there. Number 3, a reliever we've already talked about, Kenley Jansen.
Jansen, I think, is going to be very interesting. Because he's a restricted free agent, the Dodgers have the right to match. But again, because of Friedman's style, if he signs and goes to another place, you get a high draft pick. Closers, typically, most sabermetricians don't put a ton of value monetarily on closers, but you are with the Dodgers, who have this big open checkbook and have one of the highest payrolls in all of MLB. So it's going to be a real test of Friedman's philosophy to see if he wants to shell out the money it will take to get Jansen or to match somebody's offer.
What do you think his limit is for Jansen? Like if somebody comes out and offers him 3 years, 75 mil, they're like, no,
No,
no
definitely
way.
not. I would say, oh man, I'm not sure what the top closers make. I would 15, 18. I feel like is the cap. If it goes in the 20s, I think you let him go. You try and trade. The Dodgers farm system is deep. You can try and trade for a young arm with a valuable contract to try and replace Jansen. And so Jansen's contract, if somebody wants to mark up the price, let's say the Yankees want to replace Chapman and Miller, who they traded away, and really get a good closer, they can overspend and get Jansen. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, second guy on the list is a guy that we know is going to get paid, our oldest Chapman.
Yeah, Chapman's definitely the top priority. So I think the closers on the upcoming free agency goes Chapman, Jansen, and if you don't get any, you get Mark Melancon from the Nationals.
That's fair.
And, Chapman could go to the Nationals. He could go to the Giants, obviously, with their need that they need.
Yeah.
So he has a lot of...
need that they need.
Yeah.
Good words.
So he has a lot of options. Chapman's definitely the best closer on the market. He can go to any team he wants to.
Yeah. Well, I think he's going back to the Yankees. I think he's swindling the Cubs out of farm system.
You think so?
I think so.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right, number one guy on the list right now. I think, honestly, if it were today's list, he would be farther down. But Yoenis Cespedes.
I think you really want him on the Giants.
I do.
And so I will support my teammate for once on this show.
There you go.
And I'll listen to you.
He finally listens to me.
I'll listen to you, and I'll say that Cespedes signs that big money contract. Angel Pagan, free agent, off the books.
Blanco also off the books.
And you have Span in center. You have Penson right. I mean, you have the Mac Williamson, Jared Parker platoon. That's not going to ever pan out, I don't think. They'll be backup outfielders if something happens to them.
I miss Adam Duvall.
Yeah. 30 home runs, 100 RBIs with the Cincinnati Reds, and you traded him away for Mike Lee for half a season. Rental players, folks, don't do it. And so those are our predictions for not only the World Series, but the upcoming free agency class. So that's been our show here on the Not Mike and Mike show. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.
Anthony taking a nap?
No, I was standing there, so I didn't record for him.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2.
And welcome back, folks, to the Not Mike and Mike show. Damn it. All right. All right.
I did not expect you to break on that.
I don't either. It's such a simple joke, but simplicity. Simplicity. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. All right.
We did it.
Yeah.
You want to run
We start over.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're just going to keep recording.
Okay.
See, this is why he has it on tape, and you can put it at the end of the episode. Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Nope, did not happen. I'm still thinking about it. This is
It's not funny.
I know. This is what happened. I know.
It's going to get worse, 'cause now I'm kind of motivated.
It's in my head. This is what happens during RT practice. Something gets in my head, and then I will keep laughing about it every time we go through it.
All this time trying to register.
Are you good? Blast off.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
God damn it.
There's just a little bit of latency between us.
I know.
So I flipped it, and then I saw it after I catch it.
You caught it, yeah.
So I think that I have more time than I do.
Just do 3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2.
No.
Like, I mean, like a quick, yeah.